Hey guys, so in this lecture what we are going to see is a real world example where we build a slideshow and you can see how this works. So you can do a next, you can go to the dots, you can change the image and so on and so forth. So that's what we are going to build in this lecture, and I have a skeleton ready for you. So in the JS bin, when you go, you will have a start file as well as an end file, where the start file would be where we start from and the end file would be the final slideshow. Now, if you need any help, you can just click on the Slack button and get connected with me anytime that you want to. I'm mostly online, and usually it sends me a text message on my phone too when there is a message from anyone. Now, that being said, let's move on. So I'll just remove the JavaScript from this. So I have included the HTML and the images. So the images that I'm loading is from Imgur. It's free website. You just search for anything. I just searched for wallpapers and picked up any. You can go and change your own wallpapers, and you can try it with yourself. So these are 3 images that I'm using. So the way I have created is I have a container which is slideshow container. I have individual slides, which is 1, 2 and 3. You can have as many as you want, and of course you can have this generation dynamically done, which is what most of the libraries do. When you get the libraries, jQuery packages, that's what they do. They make it more robust so that you can configure it. Now inside this I have a my slides class and a fade animation that I'll give it when it fades away, and I have a number which is the number text is nothing but it shows you what the slide you're on. Then I have the image source of course, which is the background, and the width is 100%, and I have the caption at the bottom if you want to. So let's quickly go and see how we can do it. Now that before we move ahead, there are 2 buttons, which is the previous and the next that you saw. Let me just revert this so I can actually show you. Okay, so the previous and the next buttons that you can see. So you can click on these. So on click of this will call up plus sides, and similarly there are dots that you can click, and on click of these dots you will call the current slide and the number. Okay, so that was the functions that I've already defined, and now we'll write the code on how these things can be achieved. Now, if you have any queries again here, feel free to ask me in the Q&A section or probably on the Slack channel, and I'll be very happy to help you there. So before even we go ahead, let's just create a slide index variable. What the slide index variable will do is it will tell us that this is the slide that is currently being displayed. And let's initialize this to 1 because we want the first slide to be displayed. And then let's call our show slides method and pass in the index that we need to show. In this scenario, it will be slide index. Let's write the function show slides, and which accepts the slide number, let's say n, and let's write the function. So the first thing we're going to do is let's create a variable I, because we may write the for loop on looping through the slides. The next thing is let's get the slides. So the way you get the slides is, as you can see, there are 3 divs I have created. So the way you can get these slides is using the divs and the class on the divs, which is my slides. So I can just do a document dot get element. Okay, I'll take a pause, think about what I will use as a function to get the divs, and here it is, time up. So the answer is get elements by class name. Now I pass in the class name as my slides, and then similarly I'll copy this, I'll make this dots. So remember there were 3 dots at the bottom. Yes, we'll get the dots too, and with the class name dot. So now we have the dots and the slides. So the first thing let's do is let's display nothing at all, which means let's make sure that everything is hidden. And how do we do that? We loop through the slides. So we do I is equals to 0. I is less than slides, because now we know that this will give us an array of divs, and that means the number of slides that are there in this, we'll get the number of array elements. So this dot length I plus plus. Now let's go inside, and how do we hide a div or a particular element? Well, if you recollect the lectures, this is how it goes. So you do a you do a slides, and then you put an I because that's the slide that you're on. Then you update the style, you update the display property, and you make it none, which means do not display anything. Similarly, let's also do something similar to the dots. Let's change this to dots, change to dots. But in case of dots, we do not want to undisplay it, or we do not want to, hide it. So if you see, I have created a lot of CSS class, and the dot is nothing but it's just a small dot of 13 pixels, and the moment it becomes active, the color changes. So when I add the class of dot active, it will change the color. So I need to make sure that all of the dots are initialized to the 0 level, which is no color. Even if you see when I hover over it, you see the same color. So I need to make sure that initially all the 3 are the default color. So how do I do that? I update the class name, and if the dots of class name, which means if the class name out here, let's say if the class name is active, this is how the dot will look like. So if there is any dot which has an active class, I need to make sure that I remove it off. And the way I can do it is I can make use of the replace function. And here I will say space active, because that's what I need to replace, and the content would be empty. So this will make sure that all the dots are empty. So even if I put in an active here, this JavaScript will make sure that the active is replaced and the dot does not show any active classes. So our code is set for initialization. Now it's time to display the first image, and the way we display it using the slide index. So let's try to display just the way we did a none. We'll display the image using a block. So let's display block. But if you display I is already updated again here, so you don't know how it will work out. So what you do is you use the slide index. Now if you use the slide index, the problem is it starts from a second slide and not the first, because you initialized it to 1. Now there is one way you can do this, is you can just make this a -1, and everything should start from first. You see that? But the dot is not yet selected. So what you do a same thing for dot, where you remove the class name. Now we're going to add the class name. Let me copy this, and let's do a plus equals to space active, and instead of I, let's make this slide index -1. Okay, so this dot shows which one is the active. So works well, right? Let's try to change. Oops, this function is not yet implemented. So what happens on click of these arrows? Well, on click of these arrows, you call up plus slides. So let's write this function plus slides. Function plus slides. And let's say it accepts a number 2, and it could be +1 or a -1. Now how do you update the slides? Well, you call show slides, and you already have a slide index. So whatever index you're on, depending on the click, you plus or minus it. So you'll do a slide index. That's what you pass here, just the way. But you update it with plus equals to n. What this will do is, if you click the plus sign on the next slide, it will pass in a 1. So plus slides 1, slide index +1. If you pass in a -1, which means slide index, which is 1, say -1. So let's do this and let's check. Fantastic, it works. Oops, what happened? Well, when you do the next after the third slide, it's breaking, because the slide index goes on to being the 4th index. If you see here, when you do a +1, it becomes 4. So let's write a condition. Let's write a condition which will update slide index. So if n, which is passed, is greater than slides dot length, which means it's more than the elements that it contains or the number of slides that we have, then I will update this to slide index is equals to 1. Initialize it back to 1, which means let's do next, 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 and fantastic, it works in a circular fashion. Let's try to click the back. Again, we have the same problem. We have to implement a similar condition. Now the problem is, when the slide index goes, or actually when n goes less than 1, In that case, we need to make sure we assign the slide index to slides.length, which means the last one, because you have to make it circular even in the clockwise and the anti-clockwise directions. You see that? So now it goes to third, now it goes to first, second, third, and then again first. So the circular implementation is also done. We have another implementation, which is the dots, which do not work yet. How do we make it work? Well, we need to implement the current slide method. So what do we do in current slide method? We write a function current slide, and again this will accept a number n, and all I need to do is update the slide index with the number of the dot that we are passing in. So let's say I will do a show slides, and I will update this slide index with n. Let's try to run this. Oh, nice. Fantastic. I don't like these captions, so let me just update this. At least the first one. It's not about what you see, but about what sees you. I know, tricky. Well, I'll leave the caption 2 and 3 for you to update. Let me know in the comments or probably in the Q&A section on what you would write as caption 2 or 3 for these images. I would love to see how interesting you can get. So that was our slideshow. Of course, you can automate the slideshow, which I'll cover in the next video. And if you have any questions, let me know in the Q&A section or connect with me on the Slack community. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next class.